They say you can't go back in time to rewrite your story. But what if someone walked into your life and made you question everything you thought you knew about love, loneliness, and second chances? Meet Sarah, a 45-year-old woman who has spent most of her life building walls around her heart. After years of painful experiences, she's settled into a life of quiet solitude. Her days are predictable: work, hobbies, the occasional weekend outing, but she has made peace with her emotional distance from the world. At least, that's what she tells herself. But deep down, something feels missing. Something she's buried deep within. Sarah's past is marked by failed relationships, heartbreaks that left scars too deep to ignore. She swore off the idea of love, convincing herself that happiness could be found in independence. Yet, there's always a flicker of longing, a wish for something more. Her routine life, built on a foundation of contentment, feels like a fragile illusion. Her father, a prominent figure in her life, has his own circle of friends, and one day, they invite a new face, his friend's daughter, Mia. A vibrant, free-spirited woman who's everything Sarah isn't. Sarah doesn't know it yet, but Mia will become the catalyst for a chain of events that will challenge everything she has ever believed about herself. In this video, we'll follow Sarah's journey as her world is turned upside down. We'll explore how a quiet, settled life can be shaken by the unexpected, how even the most carefully guarded hearts can still ache, and what happens when someone teaches you to feel again. You won't want to miss the twists and turns of this story. Trust me, it's a journey of emotions, self-discovery, and the kind of connection you never saw coming. So stick around till the end, because what happens next might just surprise you. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an update. Now, let's get into it. Sarah wasn't sure what drew her to Mia at first. Maybe it was the energy that radiated from her, something she hadn't felt in years. Or maybe it was the way Mia didn't apologize for being herself. Bold, confident, and completely unafraid to take up space in a world that often feels too small. Sarah, on the other hand, had long perfected the art of blending in, of keeping her thoughts and emotions tucked neatly away. But Mia made her feel seen. Their first few conversations were innocent enough. A few comments here and there about the weather, the kind of small talk that Sarah had mastered over the years. But as the days passed, those casual exchanges turned into something deeper. Mia didn't seem to mind Sarah's quiet demeanor. In fact, she welcomed it, asking questions about Sarah's life that made her reflect in ways she hadn't in ages. There was a moment, on a warm Saturday afternoon, when they found themselves sitting together on the porch, watching the world go by. Mia had just returned from a weekend trip with friends, and they shared stories of their respective lives. Sarah had never been one to open up to people easily, but there was something about Mia that made her feel like she could let her guard down, just for a moment. Mia talked about her travels, the people she met, and the adventures she sought out. She spoke with such passion, a raw honesty that Sarah hadn't encountered in a long time. It made her wonder how someone could live so freely when she'd spent most of her life hiding from the world. As the conversation deepened, Sarah began to feel something stir within her. A mixture of admiration and something else. It was a sensation she hadn't experienced in years, the kind that made her heart race and her palms sweat. She quickly brushed it aside. After all, she was much older than Mia. She was the quiet, settled woman who didn't chase after things that weren't meant for her. But Mia wasn't like the others Sarah had met. There was no judgment in her eyes, no hesitation in her voice. Mia didn't treat her like an older woman who had given up on love. She treated her like an equal, like someone worth getting to know. As the conversation continued, Sarah found herself laughing more than she had in a long time. Mia's presence felt comforting, yet there was an undeniable tension in the air, something Sarah couldn't quite place. She had spent so much of her life avoiding feelings that it was almost foreign to her now. But Mia, with her easy smile and carefree nature, was beginning to break down walls Sarah hadn't realized were still standing. By the time the afternoon turned to evening, Sarah realized that Mia had made her feel something she hadn't felt in years, alive. It was a strange, unfamiliar feeling, like a door had been cracked open just enough to let a little light in. She didn't know where this connection was heading, but for the first time in a long while, she found herself curious, eager even, to see what might come next. The days that followed were a blur of moments that felt both ordinary and extraordinary. Sarah found herself looking forward to the next encounter with Mia, even if it was just a quick chat in passing. They began to see more of each other, casual meetings, sometimes at Sarah's place, other times at a cafe or park. With each passing conversation, the connection between them deepened, like an invisible thread pulling them closer together. What struck Sarah most was how easy it was to be with Mia. There were no expectations, no judgments. Just two people, talking, laughing, and sharing thoughts they'd kept locked away for too long. Mia's world was full of possibilities, of freedom, and Sarah found herself wanting to be a part of that world, even if just for a little while. It was during one of these meetings that Mia shared something deeply personal, a story from her past that Sarah hadn't expected. Mia talked about a failed relationship, about the pain of loving someone who didn't love her back, and the journey she'd taken to heal from it. The honesty in Mia's words caught Sarah off guard, and for a moment, she didn't know how to respond. "I guess I've always been afraid of getting hurt again," Mia said, looking down at her coffee. "But then I realized, I'd rather take the risk than live a life where I never feel anything at all." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. There was something about the way Mia spoke, about love, about vulnerability, that resonated with her in a way she couldn't explain. Sarah had spent so many years trying to protect herself from the pain of love, building walls around her heart so high that nothing could get through. But Mia's words made her wonder if she had built those walls too thick, too high. Over the following weeks, Sarah found herself reflecting on what Mia had said. Could she really live a life without love? Was it possible to be content with just the surface of things, never diving deeper into the raw, messy emotions that came with opening your heart? Mia seemed to challenge every belief Sarah had held about herself. She was a reminder of everything Sarah had left behind, the hope, the desire, the longing. And yet, Sarah wasn't ready to acknowledge it. There were still too many fears, too many doubts about what a relationship between them could mean. She was older, settled, and far more guarded than Mia. They lived in different worlds, separated by years of experience and emotional baggage. One afternoon, as Sarah sat at her kitchen table, staring out the window, she couldn't help but think about how much Mia had already changed her. The old Sarah, the one who had sworn off love, would have simply closed herself off and walked away. But this new version of herself, the one who was beginning to feel again, wanted to take a chance. But even as that thought lingered, another part of her, the part that had been in control for so long, screamed at her to stop. This could be a mistake. What if this only led to more pain? More disappointment? As the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah found herself alone with her thoughts, her heart in turmoil. She couldn't deny the pull she felt towards Mia, but she also couldn't ignore the fear that came with it. For the first time in years, Sarah was beginning to understand what it meant to truly be vulnerable, to open herself up to something she wasn't sure she could control. And that terrified her. The ache, the longing, was back. But this time, it wasn't something she could ignore. It was too real, too powerful to push away. And as much as she tried to talk herself out of it, Sarah knew deep down that she couldn't stay in the safety of her solitude forever. Something had shifted inside her, and she couldn't pretend it wasn't there. She just didn't know yet whether she was ready to face it. It happened one evening, almost unexpectedly. Mia had suggested they take a walk around the park near Sarah's house. It was the kind of thing people did without thinking, just a stroll, casual and simple. But for Sarah, it felt like more than that. She hadn't anticipated the way her heart would race at the thought of being alone with Mia, surrounded by the quiet of the evening. They walked side by side, the cool breeze brushing through their hair, the fading light casting long shadows across the path. The sounds of the city faded away, leaving only the quiet rhythm of their footsteps. Sarah's mind buzzed with a mix of excitement and uncertainty, each moment heavier with anticipation than the last. They talked about everything and nothing, little anecdotes from their daily lives, the books they were reading, the movies they'd seen. But there was an unspoken tension in the air, something neither of them had addressed yet. Sarah could feel it, a growing intensity that was impossible to ignore. She glanced over at Mia, who seemed lost in thought, her steps slow and measured. "You've been quiet," Sarah said, breaking the silence. "Is everything okay?" Mia's eyes met hers, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause. There was something in her gaze, something searching, as if she was trying to decide whether or not to speak her mind. After a long pause, Mia finally spoke. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I don't know if I should say this, but I can't help the way I feel." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. She had a sinking feeling she knew exactly what Mia was talking about, but she wasn't sure if she was ready to face it. "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice steady, but she couldn't hide the tremor in her tone. Mia took a deep breath, her hands tucked into her jacket pockets as she looked straight ahead. I think I've fallen for you, Sarah." The confession hung between them like a storm cloud, and Sarah's world tilted on its axis. Her pulse quickened, her breath shallow. She hadn't expected Mia to say it aloud, and yet, somehow, she couldn't deny the truth in it. For weeks, she had felt the connection growing, the undeniable pull between them, but hearing it spoken out loud made it all the more real, and all the more terrifying. Mia's eyes were wide, vulnerable, as if waiting for Sarah to say something, anything. But Sarah's mind was racing, her thoughts tangled in a storm of emotions. She had spent so many years guarding herself from this very thing, and now that it was in front of her, she didn't know how to respond. "I don't know what to say," Sarah finally whispered. The words felt like a weight in her mouth, like she was choking on them. She had always prided herself on being in control, on keeping her emotions in check. But this was different. This was raw. Mia stopped walking, turning to face Sarah. "You don't have to say anything," she said, her voice trembling just a little. I couldn't keep it inside anymore. I know this might be complicated, but I need you to know. I'm not looking for anything easy. I just want to be honest with you." Sarah stood frozen, the night air suddenly colder, the weight of the moment pressing down on her chest. She wanted to reach out, to tell Mia that she felt something too, that the walls around her heart had started to crack under the force of this unexpected connection. But she couldn't, not yet. Instead, she stepped back slightly, her gaze shifting to the ground. "I'm not sure I can do this," she whispered, almost to herself. "It's complicated." Mia's expression softened, but there was a glimmer of sadness in her eyes. "I understand," she said quietly. "I just wanted you to know how I feel. I don't expect anything in return. I just thought you should know." The silence between them stretched, thick and heavy, before Mia took a step back. "I should go. I didn't mean to make things awkward." She began to turn, but Sarah reached out instinctively, her hand brushing against Mia's arm. "Mia, wait," Sarah said, her voice trembling now. "I don't want to push you away. I need time." Mia paused, her back still turned to Sarah. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Take all the time you need," she said softly, and Sarah could hear the faintest edge of vulnerability in her voice. "I'll be here, Sarah. I'm not going anywhere." With that, Mia walked away, leaving Sarah standing alone in the quiet park, her heart pounding in her chest. The world felt both bigger and smaller at the same time, and Sarah had no idea what to do with the rush of emotions flooding her. For the first time in years, she felt torn between two worlds, one where she stayed safely hidden behind her walls, and another where she allowed herself to feel again, to risk everything for something that could bring her more pain, or more joy than she had ever known. She didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, she knew one thing for sure: things were never going to be the same again. The days that followed were heavy with silence. Sarah found herself going through the motions of her life, but everything felt off-kilter, like she was standing just outside the frame of her own existence. Mia's confession had shaken her to the core, and though she tried to bury the feelings it stirred, they refused to stay hidden. Her routine, once a comforting series of predictable events, now felt hollow. She couldn't stop thinking about that moment in the park when Mia had admitted her feelings. The raw honesty in Mia's voice had haunted her, and no matter how much she tried to focus on work or her hobbies, her mind kept drifting back to those words. "I think I've fallen for you, Sarah." Every time the words echoed in her mind, her heart raced. Part of her wanted to reach out to Mia, to say something, anything, that would clear the air. But another part of her was terrified. She'd spent so long building a life of solitude, a life where her heart was safe from the messiness of love, that the thought of risking it all for someone else felt overwhelming. It wasn't just the fear of rejection that held her back. It was the fear of being vulnerable, of opening herself up to someone in a way that might leave her exposed. She had been hurt before, more times than she cared to count, and the idea of going through that again was almost too much to bear. But every time she tried to push those feelings aside, she found herself thinking about Mia again. The way Mia laughed, the way her eyes sparkled when she spoke about her dreams, the way she seemed to see right through Sarah's carefully constructed walls. One evening, Sarah sat alone in her living room, a glass of wine in her hand as she stared at the empty space in front of her. The silence in the room felt suffocating, and she couldn't help but wonder if she was making a mistake by distancing herself from Mia. Maybe the walls she had built up to protect herself were just a way to avoid living the life she truly wanted. She reached for her phone, her fingers trembling as she unlocked it. For a moment, she hovered over Mia's contact, unsure whether to call or leave things as they were. Then, without thinking, she typed out a message. I've been thinking about what you said, about how you feel. I don't know what to do with all of this. I don't want to hurt you, but I'm scared. I've spent so many years trying to keep my heart safe, and now I don't know how to let it go. But I can't stop thinking about you. I need to talk. Sarah hit send before she could second-guess herself. Her heart pounded in her chest as she waited for a response. Seconds felt like hours as she stared at the screen, her pulse quickening with every passing moment. Finally, the reply came. I've been thinking about you too, Sarah. I understand your fears, but I'm not going anywhere. We can take this slow, one step at a time. You don't have to have all the answers right now. Just, let's talk when you're ready. Sarah let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. There was relief in Mia's words, but also an underlying sense of hope. Mia wasn't asking for everything at once. She was asking for a chance to explore whatever it was that was building between them, without pressure, without rushing. For the first time in weeks, Sarah allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't too late for something real. Something meaningful. The next few days were filled with small, but significant steps forward. They met for coffee, and this time, Sarah didn't feel the need to guard herself as tightly. She found herself opening up to Mia in ways she hadn't expected. She talked about her past, about the heartaches that had shaped her, the loneliness that had been a constant companion for years. It felt good to share, to finally let someone in. Mia listened with patience and understanding, never rushing her or pushing for more than Sarah was ready to give. As they continued to spend time together, the walls around Sarah's heart began to crumble. It wasn't easy, nothing ever was, but there was something in the way Mia looked at her, something in the softness of her touch, that made Sarah believe it might be worth the risk. One evening, after a long walk in the park, they sat on a bench together, the city lights twinkling in the distance. Mia turned to Sarah, her eyes filled with an expression Sarah couldn't quite place, hope, maybe, or something deeper. I don't know where this is going, Mia said softly. But I know I want to find out with you. Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. She had spent so long avoiding love, so long convincing herself that she didn't need it. But sitting there with Mia, she realized just how much she had missed out on. There was so much beauty in the raw, messy vulnerability of love, so much life in the act of simply letting go and trusting someone else with your heart. Sarah didn't have all the answers. She didn't know what the future held, or how things would play out between them. But for the first time in a long time, she was willing to let herself feel again, to take a chance on something she never thought she'd be brave enough to pursue. And as she looked into Mia's eyes, she knew that no matter what happened next, she had already made the most important step of all. She had opened herself up to the possibility of something real. Something worth fighting for. The following days felt like a gentle unfolding, each moment revealing a new layer of connection between Sarah and Mia. It wasn't sudden, and it certainly wasn't easy, but it was steady. As Sarah allowed herself to embrace the vulnerability that came with being open to love again, she found that her life, once carefully arranged into neat little compartments, was slowly becoming something less predictable, more alive. The first time they kissed, it wasn't explosive or dramatic, but it was undeniable. They had been walking through the city, the autumn air cool and crisp around them. Mia had reached out to adjust Sarah's scarf, her fingers brushing Sarah's neck in a way that felt both casual and intimate. Sarah's heart had skipped a beat. It was such a simple touch, and yet it made everything inside her stir with a sensation she hadn't felt in years. Without thinking, Sarah stopped walking, turning to face Mia. She could see the same uncertainty reflected in Mia's eyes, but there was something else there too, a quiet, confident longing. Mia, Sarah began, her voice barely a whisper, but Mia didn't wait for her to finish. She closed the space between them, her lips meeting Sarah's in a kiss that was soft at first, almost tentative, as if both were testing the waters. But as the kiss deepened, Sarah felt something shift inside her, something that went beyond just the physical sensation. It was a recognition, a mutual understanding that this moment was different. This was more than just a kiss, it was the beginning of something that neither of them could quite define yet, but that felt incredibly real. When they pulled apart, neither of them spoke right away. There were no grand declarations, no promises. Just a silence that felt right, a silence that said everything that needed to be said. For the first time in a long time, Sarah wasn't afraid of what came next. She still had her doubts, her fears that this connection could be fleeting, that it could end in disappointment, just like the others before it. But she also knew that she wasn't willing to let those fears control her anymore. Not with Mia, not now. The next few weeks were filled with small, meaningful moments, late-night conversations, shared breakfasts, walks around the city, and quiet nights at Sarah's apartment. They spent time learning about each other's worlds, about the things that made them laugh, the things that made them hurt. The more Sarah opened up, the more she realized how much she had hidden from herself all these years. She had built such high walls around her heart, convinced herself that she didn't need anyone, that solitude was safer. But Mia had come into her life like a soft breeze, breaking through the cracks, showing her that there was more to life than living in the shadows of her own fears. One evening, as they sat together on the couch in Sarah's apartment, the city lights flickering through the window, Sarah looked over at Mia and saw something in her eyes, something that spoke of a future they hadn't yet fully acknowledged. It was as if, in that moment, the weight of everything they had been through, their fears, their doubts, their insecurities, had been shed. And what remained was a quiet certainty that, whatever came next, they would face it together. Mia, Sarah said, her voice steady, yet carrying the weight of everything she had been holding inside. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I want to find out with you. For so long, I was afraid to let anyone in. But you've shown me that it's worth the risk. Mia smiled, her hand gently squeezing Sarah's. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, she said softly. We don't have to have all the answers right now. We can take it one step at a time, just together. For the first time in what felt like forever, Sarah didn't feel the need to control everything. She didn't need to have all the answers. She just needed to be present, to let herself experience the journey, whatever it might bring. And as they sat there, the weight of their pasts finally beginning to fade away, Sarah realized that this was the beginning of something new, a chapter she never thought she'd write, but one she was now ready to embrace. The ache, the longing, that had once felt so overwhelming was finally being replaced with something more powerful, hope. Mia had taught her that love wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about having everything figured out. It was about taking a chance, about opening up to the possibility of something beautiful, even when it scared you. With Mia by her side, Sarah knew that whatever came next, she was no longer alone. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in years, Sarah wasn't afraid of the unknown. She was ready to embrace it, ready to embrace love, and all the messy, wonderful, unpredictable beauty that came with it. And that was enough. As Sarah's journey unfolded, she discovered that sometimes, the greatest risks lead to the most profound rewards. Love, after all, is never about playing it safe. It's about taking chances, being vulnerable, and allowing yourself to feel again, even when the past whispers its doubts and fears. With Mia, Sarah learned to step out of her carefully constructed world of solitude and embrace the beauty of connection. Sometimes, we build walls around our hearts, convincing ourselves that we don't need anyone. But in reality, we're just hiding from the very thing that could make us whole. Sarah's story is a reminder that it's never too late to open up, to love, and to let someone in, no matter how uncertain the future may seem. If you've been inspired by Sarah's journey, don't be afraid to take that first step. Allow yourself to be vulnerable, to trust, and to experience the love that might be waiting for you just around the corner. Thank you for joining us on this emotional ride. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more heartfelt journeys, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Let us know in the comments what you thought about Sarah's transformation and whether you believe it's possible to start anew, no matter your age or past. Until next time, remember, it's never too late to let your heart ache again.